few months back, prior to my vacation, I got this Holosun red dot. It's a 503 GU circle dot. We'll have a look at the reticle in a bit. But I got it all zeroed in, and then I changed my muzzle device, which changed to 0. So recently, I went to the Cocoa Head range and re-zeroed the sight, and I thought it would be beneficial if I could bring it to you guys and show you how to zero a red dot, which in itself is not hard. And then we can talk a little bit about the nuance of bullet drop, height over bore of the sight, and we'll also discuss how to get your point of aim to point of impact and some of the things that are standing in the way of you making that dream a reality. And if we can do all that, 50-yard shooting obviously is easy, 100-yard shooting not particularly challenging, and we'll talk a little bit about the theory that can bring you out to 3, 4, 500 yards, depending on what kind of range you have available to you. So, without further ado, let's dive in. And before we even touch the red dot, we're going to talk about ammunition a little bit. I've got displayed here some cheapo Russian steel case. We'll get that out of here for now. That's just fun ammo. And here we have some relatively inexpensive PMC bronze. That's certainly fine for getting us on paper at 50 yards. And if you want to refine your zero after that, that is certainly fine. Although it makes sense to me to zero the rifle to whatever you think you're going to use the most of. So if you look at the top of the sight here, you're going to see a knurled knob. And if you give that a twist, this cap's going to come off. And that's going to expose the elevation adjustment. So that's what it looks like zoomed out from the top. And you can see the cap here. And it kind of came up with a nice innovation. You can see there's a slot on top of the cap, and that fits into the slot on top on the elevation knob, and you can give that a twist and you're good to go. And if you're confused about which way to turn, it's got a helpful guide right there. So in this case it is half a MOA adjustments. So if you give it a twist to the left, it's going to move up a half an MOA. What's an MOA? It stands for minute of angle, but for our practical purposes, it is 1 inch at 100 yards or half an inch at 50 yards. So a half MOA is a quarter inch at 50 yards, which is a good starting zero for an AR with a red dot, and we'll discuss why in not too long. So I'm going to flip our orientation here. We're going to look at the starboard side of the red dot sight, and we'll go from there. Alright, we got the right side here, and this cap is identical to the top one, and the adjustment is the same. 1/2 MOA click, which is, again, quarter inch at 50 yards, half an inch at 100 yards. If you're looking at some of the other stuff on here, we've got a battery cap. It takes a very common battery, so that's very easy to find. And it's got the 30,000 hour battery life. And the intention here was not to necessarily do a red dot review, but because there's not a lot to say about it, but since we got it in front of us, why don't we say a few words. And since lighting's going to make it difficult to have a look down the reticle, and I don't want to show you a boring backdrop, we're just going to take the manufacturer's word for it. So as you can see, it's 2 MOA dot, which, as you remember, that's 2 inches at 100 yards or 4 inches at 50 yards, and mix change. And then it's got the 65 MOA circle, and that's kind of neat for quick target acquisition, and if you want to put it on a shotgun, well, that's a good application as well. So we have here is my 50-yard target, and if you're interested in something like this, it's pretty much just newsprint, but it is 13 inches. It's got a nice contrast with black sights, and Best of all, they come $100 to $30. I've got these glow shot ones that are a little nicer, and they're a 50 pack for $18. So as you can see, 50 yards, here's a 55 grain 223 PMC. Now at 50 yards, the bullet drop between 223 and 556 is going to be next to nothing, so don't worry about that. I got my first group down here, a 5, and some guys will say shoot 3. I mean, if you're on a budget, I guess you could do that, but you know, if you get one weird errant shot, which we're going to see that in a second, you're going to make a adjustment off of that weird shot, and it's going to cost you more in the long run. So, centering up on our first group, figure it's about 3 inches to the center, and about 2 inches up. So if we do some quick math, that would be 12 clicks to the left and 8 clicks up. And when I did this, I didn't have access to the targets because it was out on the range and I was using a spotting scope, so I had to guess on the adjustment. So I moved 12 to the left and 10 up. And then I shot my second group at the bullseye. As you'll remember, I over-adjusted on that group, and I believe I made a 2 clicks down and 1 click to the right adjustment, and then shot my final group. And then this shot over here, I was clear I was flinching. Remember, I said it's safer to take 5 shots than 3. I discounted that one, and then with the group we had here, I confirmed that that was zeroed. So then I packed up my target and took it out to 100 yards. So this is a 3 1/4 inch group at 100 yards. Now you notice the other group was much tighter, and you would expect it to double in size as you double the distance. So that's not unexpected. But what you may be questioning is, why is it high and why is it to the left? Well, to discuss the high part, we have to talk about bullet speed and drop, and gravity and 32 feet per second squared, and point of aim and point of impact. So I'm going to drop a fun little cartoon for us for that. And the second part we're going to have to discuss is why it is to the left. And that has to do with windage and holding your gun perfectly vertical. Now, as you'll remember, my other groups were about 1.5 inches, so we get out to 100 yards where my eyes start to fail me a little bit. Remember, this is an unmagnified optic, and to get a 3 1/4 inch group is pretty much what we would expect. And remember, this is using budget ammunition, and it's a pencil barrel. So I'm not disappointed with that performance based on my skill level at all. So back in the 1940s, they got a bunch of grannies together, and with no operating system, had the ladies punch in the numbers and figure out all the drop rates for artillery shells based on different angles and powder loads. Well, fortunately, we're living in the future, and we don't have to do that. So, if you draw your attention to this bullet drop calculator that I've got on my phone, you can see that we've got it zeroed correctly for 50 yards, and if you look further down, you can see what the bullet height over point of aim is going to be at different distances. If you look at 100, you can see it's 1.84 inches high from where we're aiming. Now, I did say earlier we were going to have a look at the rifle I was using, and this is my Aero Precision with 16-inch pencil barrel and free-floated handguard. And it does still have the old birdcage muzzle device on there and a Magpul stock that has since been left in Wisconsin and swapped out for an M4 stock. So, there you go. There's the implement. Ooh, and the trigger. I switched out recently to a Rise Armament drop-in one. So you don't want to maim a watermelon. out in the wild, being humane. It's been a theme that we've covered over and over. So we're out here on the range, we've got our practice watermelon, and you've been working on your breathing and trigger squeeze. Let's take aim. And we've been practicing our fundamentals like I talked about. Breathe in, breathe out. Pat your finger on the trigger, and we're going to put our red dot center mass on this guy. So the question is, if we've got a 50-yard zero, where's this thing going to hit? Now, in days of yore, you could have used your army of grannies to calculate this, or you could have got a dope book and gone out to known ranges and taken shots and recorded your results. But in this case, we used the bullet drop calculator, which has proven to be remarkably accurate. And we know our point of aim and point of impact intersect at 50 yards because that's where we zeroed it. And we know that it's going to be slightly high at 100 yards, 1.84 inches, and then somewhere out in the 260-yard range, point of aim and point of impact are going to re-intersect again because gravity is acting on the bullet to pull it back towards the earth. Alright, let's talk about windage now. So we know that point of aim and point of impact are the same at 50 yards. And we'll use the black circle to designate point of impact and the red for the red dot for point of aim. And we've also discussed that the separation between point of aim and point of impact at 100 yards is 1.83 inches. And there's variables that act on this: bullet weight, muzzle velocity, and ballistic coefficient of the bullet, which has to do with its shape. And then that can further be changed by twist rate of the barrel and whether it's stabilized. But that's advanced stuff. We don't need to cover that. All you need to know for now is 1.83 inches at 100 yards. Alright, and we've got the final component right here in front of us, and this is what screwed me up on my first target. You can see if the barrel's canted a little bit to the left, that's going to move your point of impact also to the left, because, think of it as if it's rotating on an arc. So, I think we've got a good grasp on windage and elevation. Let's put it all together and see what happens. Okay, practice time's over. You're out in the field. Stag watermelon, right there in front of you. Big bull, look at him. Majestic. And it's up to you to put him down, because otherwise he's going to starve to death in the winter. Possibly get brutally maimed fighting the other bull watermelons. You don't want that? I don't want that. Oh, come on, man. Take the shot. He's getting away. Wow, perfectly executed. You're stone cold, man. Cold. So, we just had a look at the bullet drop calculator. We explored windage, elevation, and had a successful hunt. And I took all that information and applied it to my last shooting target. And I made absolutely certain to hold the rifle as straight up and down as possible. And as you're going to see, my group vastly, while not tighter, improved for windage. And elevation is consistent with what we expected from the bullet drop calculator. Now I'm going to go out on a limb and say that looks like it's about exactly 1.84 inches high, which is science, right? You were there.